Thank you very much for being here with us today on Brave Dialogue. I'm very, very excited to have a guest that we've had on the show for many interviews, and he brings a scholarly perspective on subject matters relating to education, um, matters connected to urban poverty, and social issues related to crime. Dr. William A. Sampson has a long history of being here in Chicago. And first off, I just want to welcome you, Dr. Sampson, for joining us today for this conversation on family involvement and engagement in education. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
Dr. Sampson has had a long educational background stemming back to his early days of going to Howard, where he got his bachelor's of arts in sociology and psychology. He also obtained his master's degree from University of Wisconsin with a concentration in urban affairs. And then he went on to get his PhD from Johns Hopkins University in the area of social relations. And Dr. Sampson has always brought a very in-depth and scholarly perspective around urban matters as it relates to sociology and policy. Dr. Sampson was a professor at Northwestern University and also the professor at DePaul University, where he is now a professor emeritus. So I'm very, very happy to have Dr. Sampson here with me today. He was my professor at Northwestern. And so I'm always pleased to have an opportunity for him to beat me down a little bit. He really was hard on me at Northwestern. He's still hard on me now. So hopefully he'll take it easy on me today since we are recording this show, but I don't think that that's going to be the case.
No, it won't be.
So Dr. Sampson, thank you very much for being with us today. I know that you've done too many scholarly meetings for us to go through all of them, but I know that you are also the CEO for Chicago United, which was also a unique experience that you had here in Chicago, being the chief executive of that organization in between a couple of your professorships. But I'm just really happy to hear to talk to you about this important matter today, Dr. Sampson.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Dr. Sampson, one of the things that's really on the matter of school leaders is how to really re-engage with parents after COVID. COVID has seemed to have had a very negative impact on student achievement across the country. Just last weekend, the state of Indiana actually wrote out a program for all of his 3rd through 8th graders for math and reading because the test scores, the meeting and exceeding scores were only 30% across the entire state. I've also heard other school districts with troubling test scores, post-COVID. So it seems that COVID has had a very deep impact on student achievement. And I know that you've done extensive research in the area of family engagement. You've written 6 books in this area, and you've done extensive research. But one of your first books, Black Student Achievement, How Much Do Family and Schools Really Matter, really focused on how family engagement matters. And so I wanted to talk to you around that research in particular and other research that you would like to bring in. How do schools help families help their students in this age of post-COVID and declined student achievement? All right. So in broader context, let's just start with that. Let's throw that out there.
Well, I need to interject that right after Black student achievement, I studied poor Hispanic families and wrote a similar book, very much like the first one on Black student achievement, about Hispanic student achievement. My research depended upon extensive in-home observations of families and students, poor families and poor students, in the same neighborhoods, going to the same schools, with some of those students doing well and other students doing poorly. And the question was, why do some poor Black and poor Hispanic students in given neighborhoods do well and others in those same neighborhoods do poorly? That they're going to the same schools, they have basically the same teachers. So those variables essentially were constants and couldn't explain a difference in behavior. What I found were significant differences in what parents did and did not do, primarily in the home, but to a lesser degree connected to school activities, that explained the difference in performance. So if you were to ask me, Jeff, what would I do to improve the performance of poor students of color, I would focus primarily upon what parents do and don't do.
Okay.
But again, many of the variables that were most important, we found connected to what goes on in the home.
Right.
One of the things that I find interesting was that, and I know you'll get to that later, on the 5 essentials survey, the state essential survey, where they have the parent involvement dimension. Most of that centers around what parents like and dislike about the school, some about what parents do and don't do connected to the school. Exactly. But there's only a couple of items that have to do with what parents do and don't do at home. In fact, there's one number, I guess it's 18.
Okay.
How often do you do the following with your children at home? Well, what I found was that parents who helped children with homework had kids who did better in school. And initially what we realized, and I say we, Jeff, because I had trained observers in the homes for 6 to 8 weeks at a time. Mm-hmm. And so the observers were coming back and saying, well, Dr. Sampson, this parent or that parent is trying to help the child with the homework, but they don't even understand the homework. They can't do the homework.
Can't do it.
So the question was, of what value is helping with homework if the parent doesn't master the homework? Well, it turns out that it's not the homework. It's the message about the value of the homework and school that the parent involvement with that homework sends to the student.
Okay.
And that is critical. Students have to understand that school is important to the parents.
Right.
And one of the ways that parents convey that is by helping with homework. Okay. There are other ways, but that's one of the ways.
Right. So I appreciate that. And so the like you did mention the 5 essential Illinois 5 essentials, and there is a lot of focus on those essentials today. And many educators are now, the 5 essentials are effective leaders in the building and in the district, particularly the school buildings, collaborative teachers who work in professional learning communities and also work with the families. Involved families is also a critical one as part of the 5 essentials. Supportive environments inside of the school, and how the district administration supports the actual teaching and learning that takes place inside of the building, and ambitious instruction. So I just want to make sure that our viewing audience, that they know all of the 5 essentials, and that there is a great emphasis being placed on these particular elements and pillars, because research has found that if schools do these 5 things effectively, the student achievement actually is improved. So I know that you've only pointed out one of them, number 18, as relates to the parent helping, but they're hoping that parents will do more. And what I want to talk to you about today is what did your research show that parents could do more of as it relates to helping the students to achieve? Because part of your research showed that the home environment mattered more than the schools to a
Yes.
large degree.
Yes.
So, what was that home environment? If you would expand the pillar of involved parents, what would you encourage the state to add?
Well, it's that's complicated because uh, it's not easy to involve oneself in the home environment of students, particularly of poor students. But let me also say, Jeff, that there's some self-selection that goes on here. That is, the parents who are most likely to be involved in PTA or after-school activities, those kinds of things that schools do, are by definition different from the parents that are more difficult to reach, whose students aren't doing as well. The parents whose students are doing better are more likely to be involved in school activities. They're more likely to be comfortable in schools. They're more likely to be comfortable with teachers. And while that's great, those are really not the families that we need to reach, because those are the families that have children that are doing better. Now, they might not do as well as we want, but they're doing better than this big chunk of students whose parents are not involved at all.
Okay.
And so the question is, and when I say involved, I don't necessarily mean involved with school activities, though it does turn out that those poor non-white parents who are to some degree at least supportive of after school or before school activities of their children have children who do better. And again, the basic value of that is it sends a message to the child about the value of education, that the parent is taking time from his or her schedule to attend a football game,
Okay.
or a swimming meet or a chess tournament. But now, if we want to talk about what's critical, we probably need to start with self-esteem. Children have to have relatively high self-esteem in order to do well in school.
Okay.
From day one. And the reason for that is that students will often be wrong. And a teacher will indicate that either in class or on a test or on feedback on a homework assignment. And if the student's self-esteem is low, then the student simply detaches from the whole educational experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, parents have to be fundamentally involved in making sure that the student has high self-esteem. They have to be involved in making sure that the students are disciplined, because school requires discipline. You come to school, you sit in the same seat every day. And if you don't, then you're going to be in trouble. If you decide I'm not sitting down that day, if you're a student, you're going to be in trouble. And so parents have to enforce the need for the discipline at home.
Okay.
Parents have to provide a quiet, orderly, structured home environment in which students can study and or do homework. And that's absolutely essential. We found out that in all the homes where poor non-white kids were doing well.
So
that's
you
not
found,
easy because of all of the outside. There's a lot of outside noise that intrudes into poor homes.
Right.
And the parents have to set aside a space and a time and make sure that the room is quiet, that there's no intrusions, that the student can do the homework or do the studying in peace. But and there are others, but
right.
Discipline and high self-esteem are essential. So is internal control. The student has to feel that they control the outcomes in the educational environment. And these are things that kids who go to school with these things, values, systems, do better than others. and parents are essential here. I mean, it's really not even up to teachers to provide these things.
Right.
And
So,
parents have to be there.
right. And so when you talk about poor children, um, in a school environment, schools are middle class institutions,
Yes,
and you're talking about their self esteem, which in this day and age of social media and upward social comparisons, how can parents in this day and age where things have shifted dramatically since you've written this book and started this research, how do parents build self-esteem without the income to produce the social trappings that kids need externally for self-esteem today? If you could just share.
it's a great question. But what I found was that the kids who went to school with high self-esteem had parents who were constantly telling them how great they are
Okay.
from the very beginning. I mean, another thing, Jeff, the students who did well in school, poor, non-white students, Black and Hispanic students did well in school. All of them, and this might sound small, but it's really big. All of them had chores at home that they had to do every day. It took a while for me to figure out the value of that. Well, the chores require discipline. If it's your day to wash dishes, you wash dishes that day, every day. If you don't, you're in trouble. And when you finish washing dishes, your parents tell you how great a job you did.
Oh,
How great a job you did at
okay.
washing dishes. This teaches discipline, it teaches responsibility, and it raises self-esteem. And all of these parents did that. I mean, I had one little kid, and he wasn't even involved in the study. It was his sister involved in the study. He was 5 years old, and he had the job of cleaning the toilet. And his mother, well, he didn't do the job that day, so his mother threatened to clean the toilet with him, with his head, if she found out he didn't clean the toilet. So he rushed to clean the toilet.
Okay.
And 5 minutes later, the mother goes in there and tells him, "Oh, look how great my son is! Look at the job he did cleaning the toilet." And we may think, "Oh, that's something small," but for a
Right.
5-year-old, that's how you start to build self-esteem. So that when
Okay.
that child goes to school and a teacher asks, "Is the answer A or B?" and he says A, and it turns out to be B, he doesn't fall apart.
Does okay.
He doesn't
Wow.
fall apart.
So you're saying that the small things at home that people with lower economic means have, it's the smaller things that they can do to start building up the self-esteem, so you don't have to have the external trappings that many young people want in this day and age in terms of
Yes.
shoes and clothing and phones. You're saying that it's more of an internal value that they're building, value system that they're building. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes. From day one, from early age, because
Okay.
the kids we studied were all young kids. We studied only elementary school kids, third, fourth, and fifth graders. And while the external forces cannot be undersold, they are out there. There's no question about that. But you got kids who say, "Yeah, Nikes are nice, and once I get out of college, I'll buy a lot of them." And that's the kind of attitude that we see in these poor kids who do well.
Okay.
Because absolutely low self-esteem kids are in trouble in school. Kids without discipline are in trouble in school. Kids without a sense of responsibility are in trouble in school.
Mm-hmm.
Kids who don't think that education matters to their parents are in trouble in school. And parents can give those signals that about the value of education in a number of ways. Again, helping with homework, involving themselves in school activities. But you got to remember, Jeff, I mean, a lot of these parents, and that's particularly the case with Latino parents, may not speak the language very well, may not be very articulate. Teachers are very articulate. Teachers have command of the King's English. And you got poor folks who don't and who feel out of place in the school environment. and it makes it very difficult for them to involve themselves with the child in extracurricular activities.
Okay.
And schools have to take that into account.
Okay. Good. So the essence of your frame for involved parents, you would say that building your child's self-esteem is job number one for them at home, really.
That's correct. That's
And,
correct.
and then
Discipline would be job number two.
Number two. Okay.
Yeah.
And discipline, what you mean by
internal control?
Internal control. Okay. Let me just go back to discipline because I don't want people to be misconstrued what you mean by discipline. Discipline just means that they follow.
We're not talking about spanking them.
Spanking. There's a sequencing throughout their day, starting at a certain time.
That's correct.
Ending at a certain time, and essentially managing their minutes in between.
That's correct. And that's why, by the way, the involvement of the child in extracurricular activities is very important because it requires discipline. You were a football player. If practice is at 3 o'clock and you arrive at 3:15, you're in trouble. You might be off the team. So if you want to play, you got to be there at 3 o'clock. So, and you learn that early on. And so if you're going to be involved in any extracurricular activities, whether it's yearbook or basketball or swimming or whatever it is, you've got to have discipline or you're going to get kicked off. You're going to be pushed out.
Good. So I want to make sure that we underscore that. So Dr. Sampson, I hear teachers and educators bemoaning the fact that students of all colors, all socioeconomic backgrounds are coming to schools with lesser of these qualities, particularly self-esteem.
Yes.
How can schools, what can schools do to work with parents to help build self-esteem now in this day and age?
Well, whether it's schools or representatives of the school or people hired by the school, first of all, you have to teach a lot of parents what self-esteem means. I mean, the average parent has no clue about what self-esteem means and or is linked to educational achievement. So somebody has to be able to reach out to parents and explain to parents the value of the self-esteem, the value of the discipline, the value of the quiet, structured, orderly home environment in which kids can do their work, the value of having a parent constantly explain or show students how valuable education is, how important education is.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I got involved in this because I was one of those poor Black kids. Now, and my mother, there was never any doubt that all of us, and we were on welfare for about half of my life, were going to college. There was never any question. I mean, you're going to go to college or you're going to, I'm going to kill you. That was the option. And so I never even gave it a second thought. And it dawned on me, I said, well, is that so special? And it turns out that, well, it's a little special and it's increasingly in the minority nowadays, because as you indicate, there's all these outside influences. But the reality is that poor people get out of poverty every day. Not like they used to, but get out of poverty every day. How do they do that? Through education.
Right.
So some of these poor people are doing well.
Okay.
So what I tried to do was find out why some are doing well and others aren't. And that's what I found out. And most of those answers rest in the homes. Now, schools, some schools, a lot of schools have the resources to help parents who want to understand what they need to do to understand those things. That schools can have people who can reach out to those parents.
Okay.
And that probably isn't teachers, but it could be. But teachers have enough on their plates, to be very honest.
Mhm.
And so if I had to invest in school-related resources or home-related resources, I would invest in the home-related resources.
Okay. So
That's
university.
remember, there are generations. Pardon me?
Keep going.
Jeff, there were generations of poor Black kids who went to one-room schools in the South,
Right.
who moved on to historically Black colleges in the South,
Right.
and then moved on to become movers and shakers.
Right.
So those schools didn't have big libraries. They didn't have an awful lot of resources. They didn't have psychologists and social workers, but they were disciplined, self-esteem, and that they convinced students that education was important. And we need to help parents understand what they need to do, how they need to do it, and support them in doing these things. Now, again, you're going to have some parents who don't care. I don't know what you do with them, Jeff, to be very honest with you.
Okay.
But you have an awful lot of parents who do care and
Right.
just don't know what they need to do.
Okay. And so, Dr. Sampson, on that note, in terms of supporting parents that do care, and a lot of schools are now investing in parent universities, channeling a lot of those resources that you're speaking about through parent universities, and helping parents to build those skills
Right.
to help their students. So I'm glad that you mentioned that so much. And believe it or not,
Right.
we're already short of time. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do, Dr. Sampson. If people are interested in having you to be a guest speaker, and or to come in and to speak to help them build their family engagement, I'm going to post your email address and also your phone number, which will be part of the credits here today. And are you a person that comes and does this work with school districts?
Yes. And
Okay.
in fact, I'm doing some with one of the Evanston school districts now.
Okay.
For me, it's more than the research. I want poor non-white kids to do well.
Okay.
And I think there's enough research out there, much of which is mine, but others have done it to tell us how that needs to be done. If somebody's got a parent university, they should have called me a long time ago.
All right. Well, you know what? I appreciate you coming on today. And I will make sure that, of course, now you've said that, and so maybe leaders who are watching the show will actually contact you. So thank you very much, Dr. Sampson, for being with us today. We didn't even scratch the surface in terms of this conversation. So I have to have you back on again for another show. But I do thank you for your time today, for being with us. I'm Jeff Cohn of Brave Dialogue. Thank you very much for being with us today. And if you're interested in contacting Dr. Sampson, his information is available. Thank you very much. Join us again in the future.